My sister always took her phone calls outside. At first, I didn't think much of it. Some people just like privacy. Some people hate being overheard. And my sister, Mara, had always been a little secretive, slipping out of rooms quietly, lowering her voice when certain topics came up, guarding parts of her life like they were fragile glass. So when she stepped onto the balcony every time her phone rang, I told myself it was normal. Until the night I heard my name. We were living together temporarily. That was the excuse we both used. Just for a few months, she'd said when she showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a tired smile. Until I get back on my feet. I hesitated, but I let her in. Because she was my sister. Because she'd been through a rough divorce. Because family helps family. And because at that point in my life, I still believed that love meant trust by default. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, thin walls that carried sound whether you wanted them to or not. The kind of place where you learn each other's habits quickly, who wakes first, who forgets to replace the toilet paper, who leaves cabinet doors open, and who takes phone calls outside. Mara never missed one. Her phone would buzz, she'd glance at the screen, and without a word, she'd grab her jacket and step onto the balcony. Every time. Rain, cold, late at night, always outside. The first week, I joked about it. You know, I said one morning over coffee, you don't have to go into witness protection just to answer a call. She smiled tightly. Old habit. From what? I asked. She shrugged. Marriage. I let it go. That was my first mistake. The second week, I noticed the calls were getting longer. 10 minutes, 20, sometimes 30. She'd come back inside, quieter than before, eyes unfocused, jaw tight. She'd avoid eye contact, head straight for her room, door clicking shut behind her. You okay? I asked once. Just tired, she replied. She said that a lot. The third week, the calls started happening late at night. After midnight, I'd be half asleep when I heard the balcony door slide open, the soft click as it shut behind her. I'd stare at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic below, the whisper of wind through the railing. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh softly. Sometimes her voice would harden. Once I heard her crying.
I sat up in bed, heart pounding, debating whether to knock on her door. I didn't. Because she hadn't invited me in. I told myself not to be paranoid, told myself she deserved privacy, told myself it wasn't my business. But something about the way she avoided the subject entirely made my skin itch. And then there was the phone. She never left it unattended, not on the counter, not on the couch, not even to shower. She took it with her everywhere, even the bathroom. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. I was supposed to work late, but a meeting got canceled. I walked in quietly, dropped my bag by the door, and froze. Mara was on the balcony, phone pressed to her ear, voice low, urgent. She still doesn't know, she said. I stopped breathing, not because of the words themselves, but because of the tone. It wasn't casual. It wasn't friendly. It was calculated. I stood there, heart racing, telling myself to move, to make noise, to announce my presence. I didn't. No, she trusts me, Mara continued. She always has. My stomach flipped. She trusts me. I took a step back, careful not to let the floor creak. This wasn't accidental anymore. This wasn't coincidence. She was talking about me. She won't suspect anything, not unless someone tells her, and no one will. Her voice dropped lower, but the balcony door wasn't sealed properly. Words slipped through anyway, carried by the night air. I just need more time. Time for what? My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I wanted to burst outside, demand answers, rip the phone from her hand and ask who she was talking to. Instead, I stood there, frozen, listening, because some instincts are stronger than anger. And mine was screaming at me to stay quiet.
She's too nice, Mara said, almost fondly. That's the problem. I felt like I'd been punched. Too nice. The words echoed in my head. I'd heard them my whole life, from teachers, from friends, from family, always framed like a compliment. Never felt like one. I know, she continued. I feel bad, but what choice do I have? There was a pause, then a laugh. Soft, bitter. She'll survive. Something cracked inside me. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough to let something cold seep in. I stepped back into my room quietly and closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed, hands shaking. My sister was on the other side of that wall, plotting something that involved me, and she was doing it with someone I didn't know. When she finally came back inside, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. She jumped slightly when she saw me. "Oh," she said, "you're home early." "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Meeting got canceled." She nodded too quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked. She smiled. Too fast, too practiced. "Of course," she said. "Why wouldn't it be?" I held her gaze. For the first time, I saw something flicker there. Not guilt, calculation. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every conversation we'd had since she moved in, every favor I'd done, every time I'd defended her to others, every time I'd told myself she'd never hurt me. I thought about the way she'd said my name, casually, comfortably, like it was a piece on a board she was already moving. By morning, I knew one thing for certain. That call wasn't an exception. It was part of a pattern, and whatever my sister was doing outside on that balcony, I was standing right in the middle of it. I just hadn't been told yet. By morning, the apartment felt different. Not quieter, not louder, sharper. Like every sound had edges now. The kettle whistling felt accusatory. The refrigerator hum felt intrusive. Even the light through the blinds seemed too bright, too exposing, like the space itself was asking me what I was going to do with what I'd heard. I didn't know yet, but I knew I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. Mara acted normal. That was the worst part. She came into the kitchen in her slippers, hair still messy from sleep, and poured herself coffee, like nothing in the world had shifted overnight. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I replied, forcing my voice to stay even. She leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone, thumb moving quickly, too quickly, like she was replying to someone she didn't want to keep waiting. The phone buzzed again. Her eyes flicked up just for a second to check if I'd noticed. I had. "So," she said casually, "what's your day look like?" I shrugged. "Work, errands. You?" She smiled. "Same." A lie. I didn't know that yet, but I felt it. After she left for the day, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. I told myself I could be wrong, that maybe I'd misheard, that maybe she was talking about someone else, that maybe my name had come up coincidentally. But deep down, I knew better, because Mara had said my name the way someone says a password. Confident, intentional, familiar. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick. Not because I felt ill, but because I couldn't focus on anything else. I needed to understand, and that meant paying attention to things I'd ignored before. I replayed the last few weeks like surveillance footage, the way she'd asked, casually, about my finances, the time she'd asked how much I trusted my landlord, the offhand comments about people who don't check their credit often. At the time, I'd laughed them off. Now they made my stomach churn. I opened my laptop and checked my bank accounts. Everything looked normal. Balances where they should be, no unfamiliar charges. I exhaled slowly. Then I checked my email. Nothing unusual. I checked my credit report anyway. It came back clean. For now. That word echoed in my mind. For now. That afternoon, Mara came home earlier than usual. She seemed energized. humming softly as she put her keys down, tossing her jacket over the chair, talking more than she had in days. "I ran into an old friend," she said. "We grabbed coffee." "Oh?" I replied, heart thudding. "Yeah," she said lightly. "You'd like him. Very organized." I forced a smile. "That's good." She watched my face carefully, like she was looking for something. Reassurance. Ignorance. Permission. I gave her none. That night, the call came again, later than before. I was in bed when I heard the balcony door slide open. I sat up slowly, breath shallow, and pressed my ear toward the wall. Her voice floated through the thin barrier. "It's fine," she said. "She hasn't said anything." My pulse spiked. "No, I don't think she suspects," Mara continued. "If she did, she'd confront me. You know how she is." A pause, then a laugh. "She hates conflict." That one hurt more than the rest, because it was true. I slid out of bed and crept toward my bedroom door. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, but curiosity and fear won. I cracked the door open just enough to hear more clearly. "We just need her to keep thinking this is temporary," Mara said. "Once it's done, it won't matter." Once what is done? My hands were shaking now. "What if she finds out?" she asked, voice lower. Another pause. Then she sighed. "Then I'll deal with it. I always do." That sentence settled into me like a bruise, because she wasn't talking about a misunderstanding. She was talking about fallout.
I backed into my room and closed the door silently. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was planning, and I was the variable. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. Confrontation would only make her more careful, more secretive. If Mara thought I was clueless, she'd stay sloppy, and I needed her sloppy. So I played my role. I asked how she slept, I laughed at her jokes, I mentioned work stress, I complained lightly about bills, and I watched her eyes. Every time I mentioned something financial, her posture changed, just slightly. She leaned in, asked follow-up questions, filed the information away. That afternoon, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the counter. Once, twice, 3 times. I stared at it like it was a live wire. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to, because the name that flashed across the screen told me everything. Unknown caller. Again and again. That night, I made a call of my own, to my bank. I asked about additional security, 2-factor authentication, account alerts, activity notifications. The representative was helpful, thorough. "Is there a reason for the extra precautions?" she asked gently. I hesitated. "Family," I said finally. She didn't question it. I did the same with my credit monitoring, then my email, then my phone account. One by one, I locked things down.
Not dramatically, quietly, methodically. Mara noticed something was different. "You're on your phone a lot lately," she said one evening. I shrugged. "Work stuff." She nodded, but her eyes lingered, assessing. 2 days later, I overheard another piece. "She's careful," Mara said on the balcony, "but not paranoid." I froze. "She still trusts me," she continued. "That's the key." Key. The word echoed ominously. That was when I realized something important. This wasn't just about money or access or convenience. This was about leverage, about control, about being the one who knew more. And Mara had always liked being the one with the upper hand. I started keeping notes, dates, times, snippets of conversation. I didn't know what I'd need yet. I just knew I'd regret not having it. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I came home to find the mail spread out on the table. Not unopened, sorted. My mail. "Sorry," Mara said quickly when she saw my face. I grabbed it without thinking. My heart pounded. "That's okay," I said lightly, but inside, alarms were blaring. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I checked my credit again. There it was, a soft inquiry, recent, unfamiliar. My stomach dropped. This wasn't hypothetical anymore. Whatever Mara was planning, it had already started. And the scariest part?
She thought I had no idea. As I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, one truth settled in with brutal clarity. My sister wasn't just taking phone calls outside. She was building something. Quietly, carefully, and if I didn't stop it now, I was going to wake up one day inside a mess she'd designed with my name on every piece of it. The soft inquiry sat on my credit report like a blinking warning light. Not catastrophic, not yet, but undeniable. I stared at the screen long after the page finished loading, my reflection faint in the glass. My name, my information, my life being touched by something I hadn't authorized. And the worst part? It hadn't come from a stranger. It had come from inside my home. I didn't confront Mara the next morning. I wanted to. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to demand answers, to shove the proof in her face and force her to explain herself. But I didn't. Because confrontation is what guilty people expect. Preparation is what they don't. I made coffee like usual, asked her if she wanted some. She smiled and said yes, 2 sugars. The normalcy of it made my stomach twist. "You seem tired," she said, watching me stir. "Didn't sleep well," I replied. She nodded. Same. Another lie. She'd slept just fine. I'd heard her breathing steadily through the thin wall long after midnight. After she left for the day, I didn't go to work. Again. Instead, I made a list. A real one. Not in my phone. On paper. Things Mara had access to. My address, my social security number. She'd helped me fill out forms years ago. My date of birth, my mother's maiden name, something she'd never forget, my mail, my spare keys, my trust. That last one hurt the most. I called the credit bureau and placed a temporary fraud alert, then a freeze. The representative explained what that meant. "No new credit can be opened without direct verification," she said. "Good," I replied. "That's exactly what I want." When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. That afternoon, Mara came home early again, too early. She seemed irritated, pacing the living room, phone in hand. "They rescheduled," she muttered. "Who?" I asked casually. She froze. My lawyer," she said quickly. "Divorce stuff." I nodded. She watched me carefully, waiting for something. I gave her nothing. That night, she went outside again. I waited 10 minutes. Then I followed. Not onto the balcony, just close enough to hear. "It should have gone through already," she said sharply. I double-checked everything. My heart slammed against my ribs. "No, she hasn't said anything," Mara continued. "But something's off. She's being quieter." A pause. Then, I know. Just don't do anything stupid." Stupid. The word sent a chill through me. I backed away slowly, pulse roaring in my ears. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't desperation. This was coordination. I spent the next day gathering evidence, not illegally, not invasively, just carefully. I requested detailed logs from my credit monitoring service. I printed out the inquiry record. I saved timestamps. Then I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I installed a small camera in my bedroom, not to spy, to protect. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early, lights off, door closed. I waited. At 12:47 a.m., I heard it, my bedroom door opening, just a crack. I held my breath. Footsteps. Slow, careful. Then the soft sound of drawers opening. My heart nearly stopped. The camera captured
everything. Mara, standing in my room, going through my nightstand, pulling out old documents, pausing to photograph something with her phone. My tax paperwork. My hands shook as I watched the footage the next morning. There was no denying it now. She wasn't just talking about me, she was using me. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I felt clear, cold, focused. This was no longer about sibling betrayal. This was about protecting myself from someone who had decided my life was collateral damage. I called the bank again, then a lawyer, not to accuse, to ask questions. Is it identity theft if it's family? I asked quietly. The lawyer didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, especially if intent can be shown. I swallowed. I have proof, I said. Then you need to act, she replied, before she does more damage. That evening, Mara was in an unusually good mood. She cooked dinner, laughed easily, complimented my hair. I watched her across the table and felt like I was looking at a stranger, someone who could smile at me while planning to destroy my financial future. You're quiet, she said. Just tired, I replied. She smiled. You always work too hard. The irony almost made me laugh. After dinner, she stepped out for another call. I didn't follow this time. I sat down at my laptop and drafted an email. Not emotional.
Not accusatory. Clear. This is to document that I have detected unauthorized credit activity tied to my personal information. I am in the process of securing my accounts and have consulted legal counsel. I didn't send it. Not yet, because once I did, the game would change. Instead, I packed a bag. Just essentials. Documents, electronics, medication. I booked a hotel for 3 nights. Not to run, to think. Before I left, I did one last thing. I changed the Wi-Fi password. When Mara came back inside, she frowned. "The internet's down," she said. "Oh," I replied, slipping my coat on. "I reset it. Security reasons." Her eyes narrowed. "What security reasons?" I met her gaze. "General ones," I said. For the first time, I saw fear flash across her face. Not guilt, fear of losing control. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Out," I replied. "I'll be back later." She opened her mouth to say something else. I didn't give her the chance. That night, alone in a quiet hotel room, I watched the footage again, not to torture myself, to remind myself this was real and it wasn't over, because now Mara knew something had shifted. She just didn't know how much, and the next move, hers or mine, was going to decide everything. I stayed at the hotel for 3 nights, not because I needed distance from Mara, because I needed distance from the version of myself that still wanted to believe this could be fixed with a conversation. Each night I lay awake replaying the footage in my head, not the camera footage, but the mental reel of everything I'd ignored for years, every favor, every excuse, every moment where I'd told myself she wouldn't do that to me simply because she was my sister. That illusion didn't survive the hotel room. On the second morning, my phone lit up with messages from Mara. At first, they were casual. "Hey, where'd you go? You okay? The Wi-Fi thing freaked me out, LOL." I didn't reply. An hour later, the tone shifted. "Why are you being weird? I need to talk to you. This isn't funny." Still, I stayed silent, because silence does something powerful. It forces people to reveal themselves without interruption. By the afternoon, the messages turned sharp. "You can't just disappear. If this is about privacy, you're overreacting. I was just organizing your stuff." Organizing. I laughed out loud in the empty hotel room. That word, organizing, was her last defense, the one she always used when caught crossing a line. I didn't correct her. I didn't argue. I let her keep digging. That evening, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded tight. "Okay, this is ridiculous," she said. "I don't know what you think you saw or heard, but you're making this into something it's not. Call me back." There it was, the preemptive gaslight. She didn't ask if I'd seen something. She assumed I had. On the third day, I met with the lawyer in person. I brought everything: printed credit reports, saved emails, screenshots, the video file. She watched the footage silently, her expression unreadable. When it ended, she looked at me and said, "You did the right thing by leaving." My throat tightened. She entered your room without permission, photographed sensitive documents, and coordinated with a third party. This is no longer a family dispute. This is criminal behavior. Hearing it said out loud changed something in me. It made the situation real in a way my emotions had been trying to soften. "What do I do now?" I asked. She didn't rush her answer. She said, "You take back control, immediately." By the time I returned to the apartment, I had a plan. Not emotional, not vengeful, structured, legal, final.
Mara was sitting on the couch when I walked in. She jumped to her feet like she'd been waiting for hours. "Where have you been?" she demanded. I set my bag down slowly. "We need to talk," I said. She crossed her arms. Finally. I met her eyes. "You went into my room," I said calmly. "You took photos of my documents. You attempted to access my credit." Her face went pale. Just for a second. Then she scoffed. "You're paranoid." I took out my phone, pressed play. The video filled the room. Her image, her movements, her phone lifted toward my paperwork. The sound of her breath caught sharply. She stared at the screen like it might lie for her. It didn't. "That's illegal," I said quietly, "and I have copies." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then she laughed, actually laughed. "You put a camera in your room?" she said. "That's insane." I nodded, and it saved me. Her laughter stopped. "You don't understand," she said quickly, pacing now. "I was just trying to help. I needed information, that's all." "For what?" I asked. She hesitated, then snapped, "You wouldn't have helped if I'd asked." There it was, the truth, raw, ugly, unfiltered. "So you decided to take instead," I said. She threw her hands up. "I needed a way out." "By ruining my life?" I asked. She stared at me, breathing hard. "You always land on your feet," she said bitterly. "I don't." That sentence sealed it. Not remorse, resentment. "I'm ending this arrangement," I said. "You're moving out." Her eyes widened. "You can't just kick me out." "I can, and I am." She lunged forward. "You can't do this to me."
"I can't let you stay," I corrected, "and I won't." She cried then, real tears. But they didn't move me the way they used to, because I could finally see them clearly. Not grief, not fear. Loss of access. "I'll tell everyone what you did," she threatened. I nodded. "You're welcome to." She blinked. "You think people will believe you over me?" she demanded. I held up my phone again. "I don't need them to believe," I said. "I have proof." That's when she broke. Not emotionally, strategically. She stopped crying, wiped her face, straightened her posture. "Fine," she said coldly. "You want war? You'll get it." I didn't flinch. "This isn't war," I said. "This is consequences." She packed that night, slamming drawers, dragging bags, making sure I heard every movement. I stayed in my room, listening, not intervening, because the hardest thing I'd learned was this: you don't need the last word when you have the last boundary. When the door finally slammed behind her, the apartment felt hollow, but not empty. Clear. I sat on the couch and let the silence settle. No phone buzzing, no balcony door sliding open, no whispered plans. Just me. The next morning, I changed the locks. Not dramatically, efficiently. I notified my landlord, updated my security, filed a formal police report. Not to press charges yet, but to establish a record.
The officer listened carefully. "You did the right thing," he said. That phrase followed me all day. Messages started coming in by afternoon. From family, from mutual friends, from people who'd already heard her version. I didn't respond immediately. I waited. Then I sent one message. I discovered unauthorized attempts to access my financial identity. I have evidence. I'm handling it legally. No emotion, no explanation, no debate. The responses slowed after that. Some stopped entirely. Others shifted tone, because certainty scares people who rely on doubt. That night, I stood on the balcony alone, the same place where she'd taken her calls. I looked out at the city lights and felt something unexpected. Grief. Not for her, for the relationship I'd thought we had, for the sister I'd defended, for the version of myself who believed love meant never questioning. But beneath the grief was something stronger, relief, because the truth, no matter how painful, had freed me. The apartment didn't feel like mine right away. That surprised me. I'd imagined the moment she left would feel triumphant, like reclaiming stolen ground, like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. Instead, it felt quiet in a way that pressed on my chest. Too quiet, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what would happen next. I slept with the bedroom door open that night, not because I was afraid she'd come back, but because for the first time in a long while, I didn't need to protect myself from someone inside my own home. The following days were a strange mix of motion and stillness. I filed paperwork, returned missed calls, reset accounts, closed loopholes I hadn't known existed until someone tried to crawl through them. Every password changed, every security question updated, every document locked away where no one but me could reach it. It was exhausting and empowering. Mara didn't disappear quietly. She couldn't. People like her never do. She told her version of the story fast, before facts could catch up, before people could ask questions, before doubt had time to form.
I was controlling, I was paranoid, I'd always been jealous of her. That last one almost made me smile. Jealous. Of what exactly? Her debt? Her secrecy? Her need to borrow other people's lives to prop up her own? Messages came in waves, some angry, some confused, some cautiously neutral. A few surprised me. I didn't want to believe it, one friend wrote, but then I remembered how often she asked about your finances. Another, she tried to get me to co-sign something last year. I said no. The pattern emerged slowly but unmistakably. I hadn't been singled out, I'd been next. My mother called 3 days later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She didn't yell, she didn't accuse. Her voice was small. "She says you're exaggerating," she said quietly. "I have proof," I replied. A long pause. "She's staying with me," my mother continued. "She says you humiliated her." I closed my eyes. "She tried to steal my identity," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. "She didn't mean to hurt you," my mother whispered. I felt something settle in my chest. Clarity. "She meant to help herself," I replied, "and she didn't care what it cost me." My mother didn't argue. That told me everything. I didn't press charges. Not immediately. The lawyer advised patience. "Sometimes consequences don't need courtrooms," she said. "Sometimes the record alone is enough." I agreed. I wanted safety, not spectacle. Weeks passed. The apartment began to feel like mine again, not because she was gone, but because I stopped bracing.
I left my phone on the table without anxiety. I slept through the night without listening for footsteps. I stopped flinching when notifications buzzed. Peace, I learned, doesn't arrive all at once. It settles. One evening, I stood on the balcony again, the same place where she'd whispered my name into the dark like it was a tool she could use. I thought about how many nights I'd ignored my instincts because acknowledging them would have meant changing everything. I thought about how close I'd come to waking up one day with accounts drained, credit ruined, my future tangled in a mess I didn't create. And I thought about how easily that happens to people who are kind, trusting, accommodating, to people who mistake familiarity for safety. Mara sent one final message a month later. It was short. "I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time before responding. "I'm safe," I typed. "That matters more." She never replied. Our relationship didn't recover. It didn't need to. Some bonds don't break, they reveal. What we'd had wasn't sisterhood, it was access. And once access was gone, so was the illusion. The strangest part? I didn't miss her the way I thought I would. I missed the idea of her, the version I'd defended, the version I'd trusted, the version that existed only because I needed her to. Letting go of that hurt, but it also freed me. Months later, I ran into her by accident at a grocery store. She looked thinner, sharper around the edges. We locked eyes briefly. No words, no confrontation, just recognition. And something else. Distance. Not angry. Final. That night, I slept better than I had in years, because I understood something I wish I'd learned sooner. Love doesn't require blindness. Trust doesn't mean silence.
And being nice should never mean being unprotected. My sister always took phone calls outside. I thought it was about privacy. It wasn't. It was about secrecy. And the night I heard my name, everything changed. Not because I confronted her, but because I listened, really listened, to the warning I'd ignored for too long. What came next wasn't revenge. It wasn't chaos. It was boundaries. And boundaries, once drawn and defended, have a quiet kind of power. They don't shout, they don't explain, they simply stand. And this time, so did I.